Deputy Troy, you have your opportunity now to put the question.
Can I ask the Minister, when has he last met the Taxi Advisory Group? Does he know whether the group are considering proposals to improve the availability of the taxi service in rural Ireland? Does he know, is there a review of the rural hackney service underway, and his opinions in relation to the piloting of ride-sharing facilities?
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister. 2 minutes.
Thank you very much indeed, Gan Cola. Under the Taxi Regulation Act 2013, the NTA is responsible for regulating the small public services vehicles sector. This sector encompasses taxis, hackneys and limousine services, and the regulatory framework applies to the vehicles, the drivers and the services to the travelling public that they provide. The overall objective of the legislation and the regulatory framework is to protect the consumer interest and to uphold safety for the passengers. The rules do not limit the number of operators. Rather, they concentrate on ensuring standards of safety and service that will benefit the public. The 2013 legislation, NTA's subsequent implementation of it, was informed by the Taxi Regulation Review report that was published by the Government in January 2012. Among its recommendations, the review suggested the introduction of a local area hackney licence so as to address transport deficits that would not otherwise be addressed in certain rural areas. The NTA made regulations permitting the issue of such licences with effect from December 2013. The aim was to enable a special part-time hackney service to be provided in rural areas which are likely to be too small to support a full-time taxi or hackney operation, and which are also too far away from adjacent centres to be serviced by normal taxis or hackneys from those adjacent centres. To address transport deficits in certain rural areas, the local area hackney licence continues to be offered by the NTA. However, take-up has been low. Despite the fact that the costs of a local area hackney licence are deliberately set low, and some of the standards that must be met are lower than for a normal taxi or hackney operation, only a very small number of licences are in use. The NTA has looked at this and identified that one of the main deterrents to take up seems to be the cost to an operator of the insurance needed to cover carrying passengers for reward compared to the restricted nature of the part-time service that can be provided under the licence. The NTA is currently undertaking a review of key aspects of taxi, hackney and limousine operations with the intention of developing a 5-year strategy for the whole small public service vehicle industry. This strategy will guide regulatory development for the sector over that timeframe. With the assistance and input of the Advisory Committee on Small Public Service Vehicles, the review is considering a variety of issues, including vehicle licensing, vehicle standards, driver licensing, wheelchair accessible vehicles, fixed payment offences and technological developments. As part of its work, the review is looking at the matter of local area hackneys and the scope for improving their effectiveness in addressing rural connectivity gaps. The NTA just plans to conduct a public consultation process in the first half of this year on the proposals emerging from the review process. This will give the public and public representatives the opportunity to provide their views and to inform the outcome of the work.
Okay, Deputy Troy, 1 minute.
Thank you, Ciarán. Well, Minister, as of June 2018, there was only 10 local area hackney licences issued nationally. So I think that clearly demonstrates that it's not working, and there's huge swathes of rural Ireland, villages and communities being left without any public transport whatsoever. Now, you did acknowledge that one of the prohibiting factors you feel is the high level of insurance, and I would be inclined to agree with you in that. So can I ask, have you spoken to the NTA yourself in relation to this? Have you had a meeting specifically about this? Have you yourself met the Taxi Advisory Group in relation to the review of rural hackneys? You said there's a 5-year strategy going to be published. When will that be published? And finally, Minister, in relation to motor insurance, you and your department have a responsibility in this regard in terms of bringing it down. Can I ask, where are you in terms of delivering your specific requirements and recommendations that are responsible to your department? And I'd speak specifically in relation to the introduction of a system whereby Gardaí can detect whether cars are insured or not on the road.
Thank you. Minister, 1 minute.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you, Deputy, for those questions. You're absolutely correct when you say that the number is 13 and it's very disappointing. And that breakdown, the uptake is low for two reasons, I think, not just one. I think the uptake is very low because of insurance. And insurance is obviously, as you know, a big problem, not just with taxis, but with hackneys as well, despite the fact that they have extraordinary reductions in incentives to become local area hackneys. Vehicle licence fee is €50 opposed to 170 for a new wheelchair accessible hackney licence for 1 year. The driver licence fee is €20 for 3 years, opposed to an SV driver licence at 250 for 5 years. And there is no requirement to pass the general SV driver entry tests. Nevertheless, we don't seem to have cracked this problem, and it persists. And I think other reasons which were given, I think a survey was done, I think the Deputy will be aware, of those people who might be hackney taxi drivers. And they replied that the radius in which they had to work also was extremely limited. And in answer to the question by the Deputy about the review of the local hackneys, it's currently being undertaken as part of the strategy framework for the SV industry. And expected this review should be completed in 2019, this year.
Thank you very much. Final comment, Deputy Troy.
When in 2019, the rural hackney licence is there since 2012, 7 years in place, it's simply not working, and I think all members of the House would agree with that. We need to address the deficiencies in rural transport now, Minister, not at the end of 2019 or 2020 like you seem to be suggesting. And it's not just about bringing people to the rural pub, it's about ensuring that we maintain and sustain an element of sociability in communities that have no transport. So can I ask, in relation to insurance, you had cited that, you have a responsibility in this regard. Why has your department not completed all the recommendations that the Insurance Advisory Group has sought of you to do so? Can I ask again, like I did at the beginning, when did you last meet the Taxi Advisory Group in terms of seeking their proposals in relation to reviewing of the hackney licence? And finally, the Taoiseach Leo Varadkar told the Dáil recently, we are trying to liberalise the system and make it more available, particularly at night time and at weekends. Would you be supportive to look at the possibility of introducing ride-sharing facilities to provide a service that is clearly lacking right across the length and breadth of rural Ireland?
Thank you very much, Deputy. Final comment, Minister, 1 minute.
I'd like to thank the Deputy again for the questions that he's asked. The date in 2019 is not settled, but I think it'll be as soon as possible. And I understand the urgency which the Deputy is referring to. But the Deputy shouldn't ignore the fact that there's been a large attempt in funding for new local link services to address the issue which you mentioned of rural isolation. And the NTA manages that programme. Increased funding has taken place, with 14.9 million allocated in 2018 and again in 2019. In addition, there is PSO funding provided for local link regular services, which amounted to 4.5 million in 2018, bringing the total funding for local link services last year to 19.5 million. Total funding in 2019 will be almost 20 million. This represents significant increases. There will be new local link services. This increased funding has enabled the introduction of 66 new consumer services into the local link networks, operating 5, 6 or 7 days a week. Key features of these new services include greater integration with existing public transport services and better linkages of services between and within towns and villages. 2 new regular scheduled services by local link have been introduced: Carlow, Kilkenny, Wicklow, and they're due to launch in the first half of 2019. Yep.
Can I just point out, in fairness